Hello, everyone. This is the latest world news in America. If you're interested, I'd appreciate your likes and subscriptions. In the United States, the debate on electoral reform is heating up with renewed vigor. One of the most important and especially urgent problems on the eve of to be elect the people, 5 Republican members of the House Administration Committee have unveiled an initiative called the Americans Trust in Elections Act. The congressmen propose to return the requirement to verify the voter's identity, prohibit people who do not have citizenship from voting, limit the time limits for voting by mail, and require authorities to maintain an annually updated database. Most U.S. states do not have all of these restrictions and requirements. One very incomplete study by Judicial Watch found at least 1.8 million physically dead citizens who nevertheless manage to participate in elections and vote. Moreover, gaps in the law and shortcomings in the work of election commissions have repeatedly resulted in the dead not only voting but also being elected. For example, in 2022, Democrats Tony DeLuca, 32nd Legislative District, Pennsylvania, and Simon Silva, San Diego County, California, won election to the House of Representatives. In the latter case, many voters were not even aware of his passing until after the results were announced. Everybody votes. The problem of transparency of elections in the United States, as well as the need to reform the mechanism of their conduct, appeared in the public discussion long ago. Demands for revision of the electoral system and bringing the relevant legislation of individual states to a single federal norm, as well as accusations of political opponents in falsifications and fraud during vote counting, have become a tradition. So has the absence of any tangible outcome to these debates. The last time this happened was in 2021, when Democrats, taking advantage of a minimal margin in the Senate after success in the House, tried to pass a bill called an Act for the People. Republicans, who had publicly stated that this law would bury the last signs of multi-partisanship, then resorted to an almost forbidden technique, the filibuster, that is, drowning the act through an endless number of amendments. In parallel, the bill was attacked by individual states, which amended their electoral laws in opposition to the bill's provisions. In the end, the matter was limited to loud information noise. However, this did not stop the sad trend for the Republicans. The fact is that over the past decades, the Democratic administrations in the White House have been pursuing a very successful policy called in the camp of their opponents the strategy of demographic replacement, that is, a quantitative increase in the number of Democratic supporters at the expense of incoming migrants. As a result, since the early 90s, such traditionally conservative states as Vermont, Montana, Idaho, and Nevada have turned blue. Blue is the color of the Democratic Party, or at least purple, i.e., from Republican reds that have become swing states. It's hard to believe today, but from the post-war era until the late 80s, California was consistently represented in Congress by Republicans. But then everything changed, first of all, because as a result of several waves of migration by 2021, its population increased by 1.5 times, and the relative share of Hispanics, until recently, most of them voted for Democrats 5 times. The U.S. is gradually becoming a country with a one-party system. A whole system of actions is aimed at this, including in the area of migration. Minorities are now steadily voting for Democrats. The Republicans have essentially only one option left to clean up the election procedure itself. Because all methods other than the traditional paper-based method leave huge opportunities for fraud. Total distrust. According to the polls, only 22% of Republicans are confident in the integrity of the vote count in the 2024 elections, while among Democrats there are much more, 71%. The main problem lies in the U.S. constitutional structure, which leaves the individual states very wide rights to establish electoral legislation. Federal election law should regulate the electoral system in terms of basic U.S. law, but should not restrict state-level activity in this area. Congress may direct its legislative efforts only to address significant flaws in the system to ensure the integrity of elections. However, state legislatures are the primary venues for setting election rules and addressing most problems. Yes, the state level allows to transform the internal electoral process. For example, Georgia, Oklahoma, Florida, Ohio have already legislatively tightened the procedures of the will, But their political engagement should be taken into account, the expert emphasizes. This order of things sharply increases the importance of the wavering states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan and others. Therefore, any such reform requires a long time and, most importantly, the interest of both parties. The presidential election is just over a year away, and the campaign has already begun. In addition, even if the bill passes in the House of Representatives, it is almost unrealistic that it will be approved by the Democrat-controlled Senate, much less signed by the president. This means that the Republicans' initiative is more of a promotional nature and provides them with an alibi in case of another clash over the results of the will of the people in the next election. As for party unity, it is obvious that in the context of the culture wars and the grandiose division of society, it cannot be counted on. Discussions on the need to restructure and modernize electoral mechanisms in the United States traditionally end with mutual accusations of fraud and attempts to usurp power. Moreover, as the 2020 elections have shown, it is not the constitutional tools that play an increasing role in determining the winner. The election of Joe Biden did not happen at the polls, but in the streets. In 2020, it was the BLM story that decided it all. Between 10 and 20 million people took to the streets, according to various reports. This mass became the political force that ensured Biden's victory in early voting. But most importantly, the Democrats showed that they could bring the people to the streets if Trump was declared the winner. The leadership of the already fractured Republican Party was terrified of such an outcome. Now, however, Trump can do it, and the storming of the Capitol on January 6, 2021, proved it, which is why there is so much attention to the participants in those events from the Biden administration. What happened in 2020 could happen again in 2024. A storm is coming. The situation of the current presidential campaign is strikingly different from all past analogs. American society is divided on fundamental issues, and in the case of the electoral system, the disagreement concerns the very recognition of its honesty and legitimacy. Polls show that only 8% of Americans trust Congress, 26% trust a president as a state institution, and 27% trust the Supreme Court. Collectively, trust in government has fallen to a record low of 26%. This has never happened before in the history of the United States. The 2020 presidential election and the November 2022 congressional election have once again shown that the biggest threat facing the U.S. is that it can no longer agree that the electoral process as such works. This is a fundamentally new phenomenon in American democracy. This was not even the case on the eve of the Civil War. No one doubted the fundamental integrity of the American electoral system. The emergence of a disagreement with the election results is seen as an emergency situation for the United States, and irreconcilable party groups are using it for their agenda, further dividing America.